Welcome back to Philosophy of the Barber. Today's guest is Eric Stevens, owner of Odd Duck Barbershop in Pennacook, New Hampshire. Eric has been a barber for just about 4 years now. Prior to opening Odd Duck, he worked at Alpha's Barbershop in Goffstown, New Hampshire. Welcome, Eric.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
You got me up early on a Sunday morning.
I'm sorry. That's what happens when life gets in the way, right?
It happens, and I'm glad you were able to squeeze in this appearance. So, for our audience, and myself included, go ahead and tell us how you found barbering, because you are not, I would say, the average, 20-something who decides instead of college, I'm going to go and learn a trade.
Absolutely. I found barbering because my mouth got me in trouble at the manufacturing facility I worked in. And I just loved going to the barbershop. I loved the atmosphere. And you lose a job and you're like, all right, let's make a change. And here I am, cutting hair.
So aside from enjoying your barbershop experience as a customer, how did that become a possibility for a career? Who brought that to light or kind of nudged you in that direction?
I think it was the guys at the shop that I visited. They just said, dude, we think you'd be cool at this.
What shop did you go to at the time?
I went to Buzz Inc. in Concord, and all of those guys were super supportive, and they're just like, man, you're here all the time. You know what a good haircut looks like. Now you just got to learn how to do it. And I'm like, cool, I can be creative. I like working with my hands.
Of course, the owner of Buzz Inc. is an NESOB grad, so he directed you towards New England School of Barbering?
Absolutely, he did. He said that there was no other place to go other than New England School of Barbering.
So how did that, do you just go to the school and check it out like any other student, have a chat with Mr. and Mrs. C? How did that go?
I did. I probably visited the school in Mississippi 12 times to show my interest. And she realized that I was serious about it, and then met with Mr. C, and we came up with a plan, because not everyone's plan into this journey is the same. And we just put together a plan to make it work and tweak my schedule with their schedule of schooling and just put it together. It was tough at first because of putting the plan together, because you have a family, mouths to feed, mortgage to pay, things of that nature, and you just have to figure it out. And I'm grateful that I did.
And from what I've been told by Mr. and Mrs. C, and actually one of the reasons why they suggested that I have a chat with you is because the plan that you guys worked out was very unique, so that your particular situation could work out and both parties benefited. So can you elaborate on how you guys kind of worked out a labor versus education situation?
Absolutely. After just losing my job, wasn't money to pay for school. And the short version is I needed money to go to school. Mr. C needed some labor done, and we just came to an agreement that for every hour I worked helping him, it contributed to an hour of school. And it teaches you the value of not only hard work, which I think most of us know that anyway, but it also teaches you that if you want something bad enough, you'll do it. Anything it takes to achieve your goal that's in a positive manner.
Well, from an outside perspective, looking at the arrangement, I would think that it would also give you a more leveled perspective on the value of time is equal no matter what you're doing. So if you can trade time in one area to gain time in another, it really does equal out when it comes to its value.
It does. It's time is precious. Time is definitely precious. So finding that balance and that it is equal. I know in my head, I had originally thought that whenever you're going to trade services, sometimes
Somebody gets a short end of the stick.
Somebody gets that short end of the stick. In this case, there was no short end of the stick. It was straight up equal, 1-for-1.
And I find, at least in the barbering profession, over time, you especially as a shop owner, you see that your time starts to become more valuable than what you thought it was. Because, like, when you first open a shop, of course, you don't have a ton of money. So you're willing to put in all the time that you have available because that's what you have to give. If you had money, you would give it, but you don't. So it's time is what you have. So time's what you can invest. But the longer that you're open and the more money you make, the more valuable your time becomes. And then there's more money to put into it rather than your time. So it kind of is a sliding scale. It kind of shifts.
You're 100% correct. Now, my shop has only been open for a few months. We opened in March, shut down for COVID, opened back up in May. But you're right. You put so much time into it and so much time. And then as time moves on, even though it's only been a few months, you do start to realize how valuable your time is.
Well, and we were just discussing before we started about like the grind and the long days that you're putting in your shop right now because you're the only barber working in there. So if you want to cut hair and make money, then you got to be there, right?
You're so correct. And you come in early, you stay late, you sometimes wonder if you remember what your family looks like, what your dog looks like, how to drive a car, because you just put so much time into the shop. You sometimes think that it is your new residence.
Well, and when you're working in a shop with multiple barbers, it's very much important that everybody gets along better than roommates because they end up being your family because you spend more time with them than the family you have at home at the end of it. So it's definitely a departure being by yourself. Like I've always avoided the being by yourself in the shop for me when at all possible. Like on a rare occasion, I'll be here alone. But if I can help it, it's kind of like if there's a spider that needs to be killed. If there is anyone else around, I will like find a way to get them to do it. But if I'm by myself, it'll get done.
Sure. I can't wait. I look forward to having more barbers in the shop because after a while, it does get old talking to the TV or having a conversation when yourself after clients have left and after you've cleaned up and there isn't anyone else to bounce ideas off of or have that genuine conversation with you because, again, the TV doesn't necessarily talk back to you. It just says what it was already planned to say.
Well, and even with our handy-dandy devices, there's still a very real disconnection between you and the outside world. Like it used to be, the one-chair shop with the old man barber who falls asleep in his chair reading a newspaper. And now it's, you're sitting in the barber chair waiting for your next customer and, your head's down looking at your phone.
Yeah, you're right.
But instead, you're looking for connection or inspiration or, it's something a little bit more productive sometimes than a newspaper.
Absolutely. Something a little bit more visually stunning as well.
It all depends on the newspaper.
Yes.
So, how has your situation gone through the initial lockdown and then through the reopening process? Like, were you freaking out after like having to close only after being open for a couple weeks?
Correct. Yeah, just a couple of weeks. I was freaking out, and I was freaking out because initially, like you said before, you invest so much money in to open, and then you're like, "There's no money coming in. What am I going to do?" It's odd to say this, but having to shut down because of COVID, I think actually benefited me because we were all shut down. So when people are walking next door to the pharmacy, people are driving by, they see, hey, there's a barbershop. There's a new barbershop, but we can't get in. And we can't get in anywhere. But everyone became aware of the shop. So that
They're
as
aware of that thing they can't have.
yes, yes. So as soon as I was able to reopen, it just took off like wildfire, which is phenomenal. But it still feels kind of weird saying there was a benefit to shutting down.
I found plenty of benefits from shutting down, and I think that anybody with a drop of optimism in their life can find silver linings to that uncomfortable situation. I was thankful for it personally to do some personal growth and to help out friends that needed it. And I'm a master at filling my time. Like, I don't like being bored.
I don't think anyone likes being bored.
Oh, you'd be surprised. I think it depends on your age.
That's a fair point.
Because I do recall when I was a teenager, or even before then, if I complained about being bored, my parents always had something for me to do, but I was not interested in doing it. I'd
Sure.
rather be bored.
Sounds a lot like my children.
See, universal.
It is.
So, your shop is located just down the road from the school. Are you guys able to support one another? And I'm sure they've told some of their customers about you and opening the shop. And have you seen any trickle down from when you were a student there?
Absolutely. I have seen a few trickle down from when I was a student, but I definitely have had conversation with clients that just weren't able to get into the school, or like if the school's closed, that they've been told, hey, go see Eric at Odd Duck. And I've done the same thing, that if my schedule is completely full and I cannot squeeze somebody in, I would tell them, hey, go over to New England School of Barbering. You're a mile down the road, maybe at most, and see if they can fit you in. So that relationship between us has allowed us to, I think, to benefit each other, and also kind of market for each other and support one another. And I think it's great for the community, not only with New England School of Barbering, but also the salons that are right around the corner from me. That if one of their regulars comes in and they just can't fit them in, they send them to me. So that community has just been incredible.
I definitely think one of those silver linings about lockdown is really simultaneously expanding our network of people in our profession, in the umbrella of our industry, as well as really disintegrate the competition focus and focus more on the collaborative, because I think that we discovered once everybody had to wait 2 months for a haircut or any sort of service, that having that sudden influx is we can't support everyone. So we are grateful for anyone else around us who can help with that, who also offers the quality that we appreciate.
I think you're right. You couldn't fit everybody in to your schedule. I think no matter how big or small the shop may be, you couldn't fit everyone in, because the influx of people was just so great. And I do agree with you that we kind of have been a little more community over competition, because let's face it, there really is enough hair for all of us to cut out there.
Well, and I think one of the great side effects of at least being in a state that only has a couple barber schools is that our whole network is a lot more approachable, because it's not so larger than life. It's not so hard to keep track of, that it's like, how in the world am I supposed to know somebody that, has a shop 2 hours away? Like, we have the luxury of being able to do that because of the size of our state. So, how did the network that you'd established with other shop owners and barbers in the area help you through, like, reopening from the lockdown?
They kept me positive, saying you put so much work into opening up and building things to get ready to have your own shop. they just kept sending me messages to say, hey, be positive, don't worry about it, keep your head up. The whole build the dreams line. If you build it, they will come. Just being positive and then reaching out. Say, hey, do you need anything? We know you just opened. Yeah, it blows that you just had to close as well. But what can we do to help? Which supporting by buying merch, which, let's face it, we kind of just give our merch away to other shop owners.
We'll trade.
We trade, okay. But some of those other shops would be like, nope, I'm paying for it because you just opened up, which I think is really cool.
Well, it's hard to expect for a shop that had only been open for a couple weeks for anybody to buy a gift card from there, especially with the giant question mark of, are you going to open again?
Yeah. I think at that time I hadn't even thought of gift cards. It was also new and a bit overwhelming because of having to close. So I just think everyone restored my faith in humanity.
So what is your progression, like where you were, we'll say mid-lockdown versus where you are right now with your shop? Like, is it beyond what you had imagined? Or is it like, all right, we're open, we're working, we're moving forward. It's not what I envisioned, but it's better than nothing?
It's kind of blown up. And what I mean by that is, I think when we open a shop, we have aspirations of immediately being busy and immediately needing to bring more barbers on. But realistically, we know that that's not necessarily the case. After the lockdown, when I look back, I'm just completely blown away that I'm booked out. I may not be booked at the beginning of the week, but by the end of the week, the whole week is booked. And then you're trying to figure out how to squeeze in an extra client here or there to help them out. So my expectations were set high, and I think I've actually exceeded my expectations because I didn't think I was going to be this busy this fast. I mean, since the lockdown, we've been back, 3 months? Something like that?
Yeah, say May 11th we opened back up, so almost 4.
Yeah, and I haven't had a week that hasn't been completely booked. So
That's fantastic.
It's crazy.
So let's go back in time a little bit to when you were going through school. Of course, after you've done your tuition and actually starting, like, do you have an expectation for how barber school is going to go, or was it just like, all right, let's jump in and figure it out?
My expectation was that I'm going to kill this. I'm going to slay it. The reality was I did not kill it, and I did not slay it. I would be the first one to admit that I did not apply myself at school, okay? There are days you're positive and you're upbeat, and then there are other days you're nervous. Like the very first time you're riding a bike without training wheels and you're afraid you're going to fall over and crack your head open. I would say I was a slow learner, and I think the reason for that is I had those other things on my mind, like, again, how do I help provide for my family? How do I put food on the table? I need to leave early because I have to go deliver pizzas part-time. So it was a difficult journey for me, but you push through. And then you get a little kick in the pants here and there from an individual or two to try to keep you on the right path.
I feel like, especially with our school, but I would hope that it would be the case for all schools, is that if you're doing it right, you are growing exponentially. Like you are growing as a person while learning a trade more than you ever thought you would in such a small amount of time. Like, I mean, 800 hours for a Barber 1 license in the state of New Hampshire is not a long time.
It's not, what is it, roughly 6 months.
Yeah,
And
yeah, if you do like the, almost 40 hours a week thing.
it's, I think at the school that we went to, you grow in learning this trade, but you also grow as a person, that you're kind of forced to. The way
It's an intense process.
it is a very intense process, and you're very much held accountable for every single thing you do, which is a good thing.
I feel like that the concept is sometimes a harder pill to swallow than others for some. It really depends on the background you're coming from, your age, the life experience you've had. Like, there's everybody brings baggage to barber school, and I found that more times than not, you end up working through it before the end.
You do. And I think the age plays a big role in it. I mean, like, I started barber school at 42. It's just like unheard of, for someone that tried to change careers then. But then you see former students and classmates that were in their 20s. And like you said, those life experiences you have, their perspective as opposed to your perspective as to how you adapt to school and the learning process and the fighting through it. There's a wide range of emotions that I think all of us exhibited at one point in time or not in school.
Well, it's so great to have such a variety of life experience all in one learning space, because you learn from each other, and like the older dogs will also learn things from the younger ones and vice versa. And it's kind of a unique atmosphere that you don't see in a lot of other situations. Like, outside of if somebody was working, at we'll say a labor focused job with somebody that's, been there for 25 years and they've only been working there for 3, you might have that, whatever, old man, you don't know what you're talking about thing. Or you might have the, we get along, we can actually connect. But I was fortunate enough to have 2 of my best friends from barber school, and they're still some of my best friends in my life, were second career barbers. So one worked in the paint industry for 25 years. The other one worked for the electric company for like 20 years. So, you got guys in their 50s that are changing careers, and they're still doing it to this day, and it's great, and they own their own shop. But, when they're going through school, they, again, just like you, they had families, they had kids in college, and lots of expenses and houses that were expensive, and they also happen to both live in Maine, so add that to the commute.
Right.
But the things we learn from each other are, like, carry to this day.
Yeah, I would agree. One of my best friends from school, we weren't that close in school, but we're definitely closer now. He's super supportive. He probably is my favorite person in the whole wide world. He's encouraging. He's always upbeat, always positive, which is kind of a bummer sometimes because it's hard to match his, his positivity.
It's not meant to be matched.
It's not. And we're the same age. But then another one of my great friends, I'm twice as old as he is. And just learning from what he does and seeing his perspective on life is just incredible. And being able to learn from each other, grow from each other's experiences it really is amazing.
So let's talk about your time at Alphas for a little bit. Like, you were there for about 3.5 years. Were you able to take away some great positives on how you wanted to run your shop, or things you didn't want to do at your shop versus what they did at Alpha's?
Absolutely. First and foremost, the owner of Alpha's Barbershop, Christopher Prunier, great dude. He will give you the shirt off of his back. From day one, he would constantly be stepping in, showing me different techniques, giving me different ideas of how to improve as a barber. It was a walk-in shop only. There were no appointments back then. And he taught me that sort of hustle and flow when there's 40 people in the barbershop waiting to get a haircut and there's 3 barbers cutting hair. So being there taught me how time management. It also taught me how to adapt to being able to cut an older gentleman's hair, to being able to adapt immediately to cutting a 3-year-old's hair, and being able to flip that switch and turn into a 3-year-old so that 3-year-old's loving getting his hair cut. The experiences I had in Goffstown at Alpha's, it opened my eyes to someone else who had opened their shop, who didn't have anything before, to now a successful business. It opened my eyes that, hey, you had aspirations to do this at some point in time, but it is a reality that it truly can be built from nothing. It just takes a little bit of time. And the things that I learned from Alpha's, things that I wanted to do at my shop, I also learned things that I didn't want to do, because I think we want to learn from the people around us. We want to learn from our surroundings. Just what one person does that's successful for them may not be exactly the same thing that you need to do, that you have to find yourself. And the guys at Alpha's always encouraged me to be different. It's okay to come into the shop with a very blue collar shop, and you've dyed your hair pink. Okay, just be yourself. So I think being at Alpha's was great for me, because it immediately taught me that hustle.
Well, it seems like a really great foundation going straight out of school into a shop that is supportive, but also willing to grow you, and give you that latitude to figure out what kind of barber you want to be.
It is. I think about some of the students at any of the barber schools, that how they're going to feel when they come right out of school and they go into a shop. Or they feel that they're going to have to just conform to what the shop does now. And I think they should want that freedom to be able to be themselves, but they should also want that guidance from those who have a little bit more experience. I think it's important to ask for help. Don't be afraid that, okay, look, yeah, I'm out of school, I know how to do everything now, because we don't. When you leave school, you don't know anything. You know how to get through a haircut, but it all changes from having that watchful eye of your teachers and your instructors, to now that watchful eye really is the clients who are sitting waiting for their turn. And you almost feel like there's that spider behind you with all its eyes just watching. And having a mentor, someone with some experience at the shop, to be able to look over their shoulder and keep their eye on you. I think it's important to have someone who is willing to stop mid haircut that they're doing, to come over there and give you a hand, or just point something out to you when you think you're finished, that they see something that could be tweaked a little bit, that they help you.
It's so funny, since my shop's been around for over 7.5 years now. Like, all but one of my barbers came here straight out of school. So they all got that time either from me or another barber that was working here of growth and checking of the haircuts and all that stuff. But I haven't had to do that in a good couple years. And it's so weird going, do I still have the patience to do that? But I mean, realistically, I'm not in a position in my own shop to do that. That's actually the other people that run the shop, the front floor. They do that. They grow each other and they grow themselves. And I'm just like apart from the shop. I'm in my own little space now, just doing my thing. And I mean, that's always been my long-term goal. Like, I don't want to be at my shop forever. I went from, being the first in, last out to, sneaking appointments in before regular hours to moving and growing the shop to being only appointments for me. And now it's like, eventually I'm not going to be here, and I'm okay with that because the team that I have here is so phenomenal that I can trust them to do what needs to be done.
I think we're nothing without our team. And I look long term for myself. You have to have the right team in place. So that's great that you have a phenomenal team where you're comfortable knowing that, all right, I'm going to bail. It's all you guys now. That even though it's your shop, it really then becomes their shop.
Well, it's so funny because at the same time, it wasn't that long ago that I was at the barber school, like helping be an instructor there. So I'm like,
right.
But it's so different teaching someone who is in their school program versus somebody who is out of their school program because their mindset has shifted a lot of the time.
Absolutely.
And if it hasn't, I'm grateful. At the same time, it's still like, it's that level of confidence. So it's like before graduation, it's always very like, where's the instructor? Like, I have to have my safety net. All right. So there's that it's, what's the word? We'll say lack of confidence, for lack of a better term. But after graduation, they're like, all right, I get to go to work. Let's go. And then they do their first haircuts. And if they still don't have the confidence, it's very obvious and becomes another hurdle. Mm-hmm. Because now that's something that the shop owner has to grow in them because they weren't independent enough when they left school. But if somebody's at the same time too independent out of school, then it's like you are not in the mindset of learning and you think you know everything and you're not going to be much good to me if you still do a subpar haircut and you're not willing to hear that it's subpar.
I completely agree.
So it's like a weird balance that you got to find somebody in the right mindset.
Well, I think finding that right mindset, but I even think to myself, coming right out of school, I was confident, but there were definitely moments where there was some serious lack of confidence. But then you grow too confident and don't necessarily want to take constructive criticism or any type of guidance as well. So I think there's a fine balance there of being confident and not overly confident.
Not cocky.
Yes, not cocky. That's the right word.
Well, and I expect people to have a little pucker moment when like a flat top comes in for the first, 100.
Yes.
But it's like, just like in school where like, something really freaks you out and you have that immediate fight or flight response, basically flight of like, I have to go to the bathroom now.
Yes.
But like, I've always tried to encourage the students that I had the opportunity to teach to identify and recognize what you're doing, why you're doing it, so that you can stop doing that and lean into it. You got to lean into the suck.
Yes.
Because that's the only way you're going to learn is in an uncomfortable situation. So if you're in school and you're like 2/3 through your program and there's a classic men's in your seat and somehow you have rocked a 2-finger C shape, like freehand clipper. All right, cool, but you're not learning anything at that point, are you? If you're confident in that.
Right.
And then good old Mrs. C comes around and checks your haircut and rips it apart and goes, "You missed here, 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 and here. Try that again."
Yes. Yes.
But you get somebody comes in who wants like a flat top skin fade, and it's been 6 months since they had a haircut.
And you suddenly have an upset belly. I can't do this.
Oh, I feel sick. Oh, and then they tell you they're a barber.
That's even better.
That's my favorite. I love going to the barber school for a haircut because it's just so much fun for someone who's a graduate and can just, we know what is going through their head because we've been there, and it's so entertaining.
Well, it is. And it's also, it also gets a little nerve-wracking for you, meaning if you're sitting in one of their chairs, because you know that their minds are going crazy because they know that you're a graduate and you're doing everything you can not to give the perception that you're critiquing everything that they're doing, that when you're really going over there just to, for a little bit of entertainment, but also to help them grow.
What? See, man,
Something tells me that you're going more for the entertainment than helping them grow.
No, see, I liked that whole two birds, one stone thing where it's entertaining. I mean, I go there for a myriad of reasons. I get to see my best friend because she owns the joint.
Right.
And we rarely get to see each other because we're both so career focused. I get to network for new barbers entering the profession. That way I can see where they go in the future. I can keep tabs on them. If they end up needing a job, if I need a barber, then I've already kind of set up a rapport. So that's really, really handy from a business standpoint. I find serious entertainment in watching people struggle, mostly because I like to see how perceptive I am. And, am I correct in knowing exactly what you're thinking right now? Because that way I can properly gauge where in your program you are,
Right.
based on my experience. But then there's also the fact that I have a very difficult head to cut, and I know it. So for their sake, I would rather they get the opportunity to cut a difficult head of hair with an unconventional haircut, typically, with the safety net of the school, and be able to find confidence there with it before going into the real world and into the shop and finding another really hard hair to cut, and then puckering and freaking out.
Right. I see that.
It's kind of like an all of the above, like, charcuterie board of reasons.
I think that's a great way to approach it. I think to be able to go in and know that, all right, I'm going to give you a difficult haircut, and it actually helps them grow, because it should set them up for that difficult haircut, like you said, that first day in the shop.
And I've never been a big fan of the term "or." I really like to fit as many ands as possible.
In there, yeah.
It's more inclusive.
Right.
But I mean, I've been doing that for the last 8.5, almost 9 years. Like, I've gone back. I've gotten to know more barbers just by going back than I ever thought I would, and to see the massive expansion of our industry in the northern New England area is crazy. Like 10 years ago, it was 600 barbers. Now it's pushing 4,000. It's ridiculous. Now, obviously, being a one-chair shop right now, it's difficult to leave the shop to find other things. How do you find inspiration or new techniques or new products or things like that? Is it like, are you highly dependent on the internet and the devices, or do you have like a really cool person-to-person network that you can call upon?
A little bit of both. The person-to-person networks try to set up a haircut for myself on a Monday when most other shops are closed and you're getting a hold of uh, barbers that you've met through networking. Uh, and most of them you've become close with, and you're like, hey, I need a haircut. I need you to cut my hair on your day off too. And that's a lot of how I'm finding some different techniques, different products by sitting in other chairs. And then again, getting on our devices and just seeing what's out there on Instagram, YouTube. But what happens is you don't really know until you try it. I mean, that's the benefit to our industry, okay, is you don't know if you like something until you buy it. And then if you don't like it, well, it ends up in a drawer until somebody else comes in and sits in your chair or is cutting hair next to you and says, oh, I was thinking about trying those things out. And well, here you go. Give them a run. See what you think. I don't even know how many tools I've bought from other barbers because they just didn't care for them.
Oh, I have so many things in my drawers and the luxury of having 5 barbers in one spot is like we all have like different tools. Some of them overlap. We have very different preferences. So it's like somebody's kind of eyeballing one thing and somebody has something that's like that or similar, then it's like, hey, just go grab it. Like test it out for the day. Because typically we'll all have backups, or at least we should.
Yes.
I feel like I have a problem with trimmers. I own so many trimmers.
I try to limit my drawer full of backups, only because it's almost like once you get into that drawer for something, you're like, hey, old friend, I haven't seen you for a while. Let's take you back out. And then you're taking something else and putting it away. And then sometimes it's almost like you have forgotten just those fine details of that tool, to where you get so familiar with one thing that you fall in love with that you almost forget how to truly operate another one sometimes.
Well, that's why I have so many, is because I know that it is only a matter of time and the market before my favorite thing is no longer available.
Yes.
So I need to fall in love with multiple tools.
Then the question becomes, do we just buy a lot of our favorite tool and have tons of boxes with, to replenish our inventory when one decides to die? I think it's a bad idea.
Yeah, I really I'm uncomfortable being comfortable, so I don't like being dependent on one particular tool in order to perform a certain function.
Sure.
So it's all right, well, I use a corded adjustable when I'm at my station the majority of the time. But sometimes I have to cut somebody in a wheelchair, and I'm not within that cord distance.
Sure.
So I have a cordless adjustable that I use when I have to do like at-home haircuts for elderly or special issues, or for when I'm away from an outlet. Or heaven forbid, when we lose power, I can still finish a service.
Right.
So kind of making sure I've got that adjustability. And then I think the hard one that takes the longest to like find a new one of, once you've either fallen out of love with it or it's broken and you're just like, it's not good enough to replace at the price, is your detachable blade clipper if you use one. And I think I've had mine for probably 5 years. And I love it. It is not what I was given in school. It is not a BGR. It's an Octane.
Okay.
And I love it. And hey, if the market comes out with something better than that, sweet. But I will buy the pet version over and over again to save like $50.
Sure.
And just like keep the externals of the old one.
No, I don't think I've ever used the Oster Octane.
It's
if I
nice.
if I recall, it's loud
It can be,
to my ear.
but that has a lot to do with the grease.
Okay.
Like, it's kind of like with the 76, where there's grease that needs to have the lubrication around a certain thing. And once it becomes a few years old, you should probably wipe that out
Wipe it off and change it.
and replace
Replace it.
And that helps a lot. But what's great compared to the BGR with it, so it's not as girthy. It's longer, which is a problem with like kids of a certain height. You end up hitting like the back of the chair when you're around the nape area. So that can be an issue, but you kind of got to learn with angles. The charging station can charge the clipper with a battery in it and a spare battery, which is handy.
Yes.
It holds the blade at a slightly steeper angle than what the BGR does, so it feels more like a well-balanced artistic tool.
Okay.
So you can really just like swoop in there,
Sure.
rather than feel like you're pushing a battery up somebody's head. And it comes in carbon fiber paint.
Right. It just looks cool. It looks fast.
So I like that for the the ability to have an extra battery. That way, if I've got to do an on-site thing, I don't have to worry about losing power. The balance of it in my hand and the control is really, really nice, especially when you're doing freehand work. So that's why I've fallen in love with that one. But yeah, it is not the quietest. But on the BGR, where it's got that styrofoam, or it's got the foam material that all the hair gets stuck in.
Yes. Yes.
That material, it doesn't have that.
Doesn't have that. Nice.
No, it has like a little membrane between the plastic part and the rest of the internals. It does a really good job of keeping hair from getting in. And it's way easier to clean and like blow out with air if you do that.
Sure. I think, now that I think about it, it's been a while since I used my BGR. I'm using the Andis Supra ZR. And
Right.
listening to you, I might have to go to the Supra ZR2, which has a detachable battery.
I will, and that's what the students have at the school. The only problem I have with it, maybe it's because I'm a lefty, or maybe it's because I'm just so used to the on switch being in a particular position, which is not the case with the Supra.
Yes, because the on switch with that is on the side. So if you being a lefty,
I have to like take my thumb and reach all the way down.
Right, you have
It's
to
really
like,
weird.
Yeah.
So, and then the speed adjustment switch is where the power switch is for any other clipper.
Yes.
So it's just like you think you're turning it on or off, and nope, you just made it slow down. That took me a while to figure out when I was instructing.
Yeah. You're right. Because I think even as a righty, I think when I first got it, I went to hit that button. I'm like, hey, it's not working. Come on, why is it not working? And then I guess every tool has its little quirks.
Oh yeah, there are pros and cons.
Yeah.
Like when you first buy an Octane, it has a safety button that you gotta push in order to release the clipper blade.
Okay.
And thankfully, mine is old enough to where that safety no longer
Or-
exists. So I can just pop it on and off
Sure.
the way you can with the BGR. But yeah, it's just, there are always little things that are like, oh, this could be better. Oh, this could be worse. No clipper company is perfect.
No, again, we all have our preferences.
Oh, for sure.
I don't know. What's your favorite? What's your trimmer? What trimmer do you like?
I've recently, like within the last year, really, really started to appreciate the Andis, was it T-Outliner cordless? I use that as my go-to, but not on children. Because it comes out of the package so close to being zero gapped that if I hold that puppy at the wrong angle, it's going to bite you.
Yes.
So I keep a wall beret in my drawer for kids because it's not nearly as aggressive. And again, I have a problem with trimmers.
Sure.
So I also have the one of the Babeless one of their trimmers. It's not the one you see on all the cool videos on Instagram.
Okay.
It's not the ones that are like, oh, look at this. It's not like the T-blade. It's like almost the regular.
Okay.
It's not impressive. Even it comes with a zero gap tool, and the zero gap tool only brings it to like the wall beret level.
Okay.
And there are some things I'm not big on because I also have their adjustable from Babeless, and their charging cords look very similar, but they have stickers on it that say, do not use this one with that one.
Okay.
It won't work. It's very, very bad. So you have to keep an eye on making sure you have the right cord.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, just like most 5-click adjustables, there's only so much adjustability unless you can, if you like the fast feed where you can, tweak the blade to where if you want to, do something on its toe versus the 3/0, like when it's all the way closed. It's up to you. I like to have that ability to tweak something if I want.
Sure, absolutely.
But at the same time, I use my detachable blades, like I use them all the way down to a 1A when I'm cutting anyway.
Yeah, same here.
So it's not a huge deal. It's just a preference. But I love like conventional adjustables. When I was in school, the Oster Juice had like just come out. Have you seen one of these?
No.
All right. So it is not a lever adjustable. It is a turn click adjustable.
I think I have seen this.
But it came with like metal and plastic guards. So it had metal teeth, but it had like a plastic base. So you could slide those on and off. Those guards are fantastic.
I think Mr. C has one of these I've seen before.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's the one who was like, look at this. And I was like, ooh, as a lefty, it's a big deal. But I love lever adjustables as a lefty more than I do crank adjustables because I can just use my index finger.
Yeah. That's an interesting concept.
It's not great when you're trying to instruct somebody, but it's really great if you're trying to impress them. Because they don't see you adjusting that lever because you can do it without pulling it off the head.
I'm visualizing that in my head. I want to see this in action because that sounds really cool. It sounds really cool.
Well, because 90% of the profession who are right-handed, they gotta, do the pass of whatever panel they're working on.
Sure.
And then they take it away from the head, and they gotta use their thumb and move it, and then put it back on, take it off, move their thumb, put it back on. I don't have to do that.
You have to do it.
I can take longer, thinner panels and do an entire panel tapered all the way down to the adjustable all the way closed because I never have to take it off the head. So it's really just a different way of doing it.
Absolutely. I think we should video this.
Work within your limitations.
Yes.
But like, what's your favorite tool on your station? Because I mean, I feel like shears are a different world that like you can just talk endlessly about if you're not careful.
My favorite tool, excluding shears. I love my cordless wall 100th anniversary adjustable.
That is a beloved clipper in this shop.
And I don't know why. I think...
There's only 2 of us here that don't have it.
Right. I think that it just feels comfortable. It feels comfortable in my hand. Like,
well balanced.
Yes.
It's not like a battery, or the motor all the way forward or anything.
Right.
It's not top heavy.
It's just super well balanced. I think when you were in the shop, we were talking about it briefly, that it's my go-to adjustable. I had originally got it because I was anticipating at some point in time getting the cordless masters, and I figured this is probably going to feel closer to it because of its weight. But it's actually heavier than the cordless masters. It just feels comfortable. And it's shiny. It looks cool too. Okay.
Shiny.
Okay.
Well, I held the cordless master, and that's at your shop, and
Yeah.
that's the only time I've ever held one. And if I'm recalling correctly, I was saying that like it's almost really heavy on one end.
Yes, it's heavier on one end as opposed to the corded master, which has a little bit more balance because of that cord.
Right. So it's top heavy. So it doesn't have enough weight in the back where the cord would usually be.
Right. If you're like flicking.
Right, because you need that teeter totter kind of motion, and you don't have that when there's no cord. It's funny. You should write Andis a letter.
Right. They probably don't care. Everyone was coveting the cordless masters forever. I'm sure they probably don't care.
I'm still not paying $350 for it. It's not happening.
Right.
For a detachable blade clipper, fine,
Every day.
but not for a cordless adjustable. No, thank you.
I got lucky. I didn't have to pay that for mine.
Secondhand.
Secondhand, that was like used 4 times, so it was basically new.
Well, it's like with the Babeless cordless adjustable. I saved $20 because I went with the rose gold because the
Right.
gold one was what everybody wanted.
Yep.
I go, I don't care what color it is. I care about the price and whether or
Right.
not it works.
Yes.
Like, yes, I have pink Dyson hair dryers
Right.
in my shop because they were cheaper than the gray ones.
Right. And it adds to the ambiance of the diversity of the shop because
Most,
they're
pe-
being
most people don't even notice them.
right. They don't.
unless they have a wife that is like, look at this Dyson hair dryer.
Right.
They're like $400. No.
Oh.
But you know what? I just saw my shear sharpener the other day. Let's talk about shears for a little bit because I don't think I've talked about tools with anybody on this podcast so far.
Cool.
So this is a great subject. What shears do you use and why do you like them?
I'm rocking Hanzo's.
Okay.
I have too many Hanzo shears.
Describe too many because I have quite a collection of other
Right.
shears.
Oh, what do I have? I currently have 6 pair of Hanzo shears on my station. I have
Oh, like out at
like,
any given
out,
time, huh?
out at all times. I have 6 pairs of shears on my station. Let's see. I have a 7.5-inch Talon, which is a like an all-around hair cutting shear. Wet, dry. It's just comfortable. And then I have a 6.5-inch Mamba, which is a dry cutting shear, which I like to use that with some point cutting and a little bit of slicing and slithering. And then I have a 6-inch Kamikaze. It just sounds cool. But the Kamikaze is definitely a dry cutting, texturizing shear. Definitely for slicing, slide cutting. It's got a nice wide blade that tapers. It's just really cool. And then I have a 40T blending shear. And then I have the VT1, which is a 13-teeth texturizing shear that when you use it, you question, is it actually cutting? Because you don't feel anything. It's literally like putting a hot knife through butter. You're like, wait a minute, is it doing anything? My hand's moving, but I don't feel anything. And then I have my my super aggressive texturizing shears that they're super cool when you decide if you want someone who wants a lot of texture and a lot of playfulness and messiness, you could do a whole haircut with these things. And I really think it leaves 50% hair.
It's like the chunkies.
Yes, these super chunkies, and they just feel good. One of the benefits to Hanzo's is their warranty, um, lifetime, which who really knows what lifetime means, but lifetime warranty. Um, your Hanzo rep comes over when you need things sharpened, leaves you loaners so you're not without your shears, sends your shears off to their Hanzo spa, and come back to you in about 10 days or so, all sharpened and cleaned up and lubricated, and away you go. And then, yeah, I'm trying to think, how did I get into choosing Hanzos? I think,
I feel like there was like a Hanzo renaissance for a bit.
yes, I think multiple shops were hosting classes, and
Like Topstone.
Topstone,
Did the Groomsmith do Hanzo?
the Groomsmith did a Hanzo. I know where Blank Canvas Salon hosted a Hanzo class. I think Topstone hosted 2 of them before.
Probably, yeah.
I know the Butcher Barber Shop, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, in George's Mills hosted one. And I mean, that's where they get you, because you're seeing these things in action with a national educator, and they're just hyping these things up, and then they're passing things around. And again, like, we're humans. We're like little monkeys. Ooh, look, something bright and shiny, and you get to touch it and play with it.
It's like going to a timeshare class on
Yes,
vacation.
yes, exactly. And then sometimes they're like, hey, why don't you come up here and try these things on this model that you don't know? And you're like, okay, cool. And then you try them, and you're like, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Okay.
Because they're fresh, they're sharp.
Yes. And then you, next thing you know, you bought a package of 4 shears, and then you go to another class and you buy 2 more shears, and you go to another class and you buy a collaboration of where they've partnered with someone, and you're buying a set of Hanzo hitter trimmers as well. And the next thing you know, you should just put on your door, authorized Hanzo retailer,
Hanzo affiliate.
Yes.
Yeah, I've actually never tried Hanzo's. I don't go to workshops and classes typically in places. That's a little out of my comfort zone. But I have an absurd amount of shears, mostly because as a lefty, if you find a good set of shears, you want them.
You want them.
Because they're rare. So I have a lot of Kinchi shears.
Okay.
Because my shear lady, Sue,
Mm-hmm.
at Sharpen Works, I've known her since barber school. She is tried and true, and she's also a Kinchi sales rep. So I have 2 Shinobi lefties, because they're by far my favorite, and I always have to have a backup. So it's like, sweet, I've got 2 sets of those shears. And then I have 1 step down from those, which are 5 stars.
Mm-hmm.
And 5 stars, I fell in love with those. I got a deal on those because they were lightly used back in barber school. I've had them for like
Forever.
8.5 years. But they sing. And unless you experience a shear that just like sings or hums, like you don't know that feeling until you experience it. But for sure, these shears are, all fixed. Like there's no like swivel thumb and I don't use the inserts for the finger holes. I don't use those. They're just so nice for my size hands, my size fingers, and my technique of holding shears. But I've never found blending shears that I enjoyed more than my 4420s.
Okay.
And they're not even like a particular like type.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're just your typical like, what is it, 50T?
Yeah.
It's double tang for no good reason. So I have 2 of them. Other than if you lose one tang, you got a replacement. And again, I've had those since barber school, and I've just not. I also own the Shinobi thinning shears,
Okay.
but they're so short. like my 4420s have a longer blade.
Sure.
So it's just like, all right, cool, more surface area. It goes along with our shear and comb. But I also have double blenders, which are for rare occasions of hair that likes to leave lines real easy.
Okay.
Uh, and we all know like a couple of customers that come to mind when it's like one pass of your shears and you're like, you're gonna leave lines. So they're great for that particular instance, but it's a very niche use for them. So they're put aside for that rare occasion that I have that problem. But it's, yeah, I've got the shears I had in barber school. Still, they're like my, back up to the back up to the back up to the
Sure.
backups. But so I've got, my 4420 cheetahs, Yugis. And I mean, they're by no means my favorite compared to the Kenshis, but they'll do in a pinch. Yeah, it's just, I don't get out. Like, I see stuff like the shark fin shears, and I see Hanzo, and I see a bunch of different brands, but unless I have the opportunity to use them in my hands, because it's really so much about feel. Like, I don't care if I have a pair of teeny tiny little hairdressing shears that are swivel thumb because I wanted to try out the swivel thumb and see what it was like. And with the techniques that I use, it's really not necessary. It's handy when you're doing like slither texturizing on the top or whatever to get a particular angle, but for day-to-day use, it's like,
Right.
It's almost a gimmick. I try not to pull those shears out unless somebody's like afraid of the big ones, because they're real girly looking. They match my hair when it's like purples and pinks and stuff. They got a big old jewel in the middle. Yeah. I'm like, Oh, I also have I have Kenshi Hearts of Fire, which are the shears that get me the most compliments because they're red with hearts and vines on them. They're pretty.
They sound it.
They're very comparable to the 5 stars.
Right.
But yeah, it's one of those things, like if you don't get out from behind your chair, it's kind of hard to find tools if you are in the vast minority of the industry. Like I can't use a wall adjustable if it has the faceplate with the indent for your thumb, because it's for righties.
I think it's difficult finding different shears unless you know someone, because again, I wouldn't have even been introduced to Hanzo's if it wasn't for just some barber friends. And let's face it, let's say we went to Hartford to the Connecticut Barber Expo, or let's say you just decided to jump on a plane and go to Chicago or Orlando or LA to hair shows.
I went to the IBS hair show a couple times.
Okay. You don't have the opportunity to really see different shears unless you're going to a show or unless you know of someone's doing a class. And I think it's hard picking shears because, let's face it, shears are pricey. Shears can be very pricey. And I think it's one thing to spend $350, $400 on a pair of clippers and decide, yeah, I really don't like these. Okay, I'll keep them as a backup. It can be really hard to swallow spending $1,500, $2,000 on a pair of shears, and you get them and you're like, yeah, this kind of blows. I don't like these.
Well, earlier in my career, when I went to a lot of hair shows, I've been to the Connecticut Barber Expo probably 2 or 3 times. I've been to ones in Boston and Revere and all over the place. And the one thing that I'm extremely wary of are the booths that have a lot of tools that don't have a brand that I'm familiar with. The only thing they say is Japanese steel.
You're right, yes.
And I'm just like, you are immediately giving me the vibe that is the crappiest
Japanese steel ever.
From Japan that you could
right.
get.
Yes. Yeah. I think that was one of the reasons I took a chance on the Hanzos was knowing that I could purchase them, but if within 15 days of having them and using them, that if they just didn't feel right to me, that I could get in touch with my rep and say, yeah, these just aren't the right things for me.
That's handy.
Which is super handy. But yeah, going, like you said, right, going to one of the shows, something that says Japanese steel, and look, they're just looking to sell you something, you know. That I think this industry is supposed to be more about taking care of people, not just selling them a bill of goods.
Yeah, but I think that's the catch with being technically part of the beauty industry. The beauty industry as a blanket can be very superficial. Now, we are in an odd position in little old New Hampshire, in northern New England, in this vast country that we're in more ways than one. But, you know, barbers in California versus barbers here, barbers in Northern California or Southern California versus here, like, so much difference. Not just in attitudes or focus sometimes, and not just barbers, it's just everybody in the profession of how people look. We're very no nonsense here. We just don't have time to be fake. We'd rather just be an asshole to somebody.
Yeah.
And because at least then, all right, you know, and now you can move on. That's not the case everywhere else. And you got to remember, like, where do we get all of our hair products from? They all come from California now.
Right.
And various places. Like, I mean, some of my stuff comes from Australia, but like reps and stuff are, you know, Chicago, California, Florida sometimes. But that's not the culture. So it's like we have to remember that. It's look, I don't have time for you to try and sell me something. Tell me what it does. Tell me what it's supposed to do.
Right.
And tell me how long it'll do it.
Yes.
And then if you have a variety of colors, I'll pick one.
Right. And if it's my two favorite colors, I'll buy two.
Maybe.
Only if there's a little bit of a discount.
All right. So where do you see yourself into 2021? And we'll go with the best case scenario. If suddenly at the, you know, New Year's Eve, everything goes poof, bibbity bobbity boop, back to normal. What do you want your 2021 to look like?
I want my 2021 to look like my shop has 3 barbers in it, where we're coming in and one moment we're listening to NWA on Spotify, and then the next hour we're listening to Elton John, and the next day we're wearing Hawaiian shirts and it's snowing like 7 feet outside, and people are just hanging out in the barbershop, not even getting a haircut. Like, we just came to chill and have a great time, and that the shop is beyond my wildest imagination successful, and everything is just positive, and maybe I'd like to get a little bit more sleep too, if that's possible.
Oh, now you want the cake and eat it too
Yes,
thing?
now I want both. Now I want both. No, I want, I'm looking forward to a bunch of positivity and a bunch of growth, not only as a shop, but continued growth as a barber, continued growth as a person. I think that's what I wish for. I think that's all anybody could wish for.
Well, I think that the way you're headed and what you've been doing so far, you are highly likely to reach those goals. I'll do what I can to remember to check in December of 2021, see where that Hawaiian shirt day's gone. Hopefully not the 7 foot of snow outside, blasphemy. Uh, but highly likely, knowing what we've been through so far. All right, I look forward to seeing your shop continue to grow and keeping in contact with you. Thank you so much again for coming on and talking with me today.
And thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
Same here.